Dam Busters March, and perhaps an appropriate piece of music to play at this time because 1,000 people are expected to gather in the Somerset Field this afternoon to remember 23 men who died there during the Second World War. Roger Bennett tells the story.
The men, 21 paratroops and 2 air crew, were on their way to the Battle of Arnhem on Sunday the 17th of September 1944, when their Horsa glider plunged out of control. A group of local people have now got together to raise a memorial on the site at Double Hills near Farrington Gurney. One of them, Ken Crowther from Midsummer Norton, was actually on board the towing aircraft, a Sterling bomber.
I was in the second pilot seat. That was my position. I was a bomb aimer, but I was also second pilot on the aircraft and sitting on the right of the pilot. I imagine about 40 aircraft took off from Kiel that morning, but other aircraft were building up from other aerodromes. We flew down towards Barnstaple and then turned north and then back, heading east over Farrington Gurney. When the glider developed a judder and the tail fell off and the glider lost lift. The glider pilot cast off the rope and the glider went into the ground. I don't think I can say all that much more than that. There were explosions. We flew over the spot and circled in order to get an exact pinpoint to radio back to our base at Kiel. We then flew back to Kiel and landed and got a jeep and came out here to see if there was anything we could do. But the local Home Guard and the fire brigade had got everything under control by the time we got here.
So did you have a full view of all that happened?
Not entirely, because we were facing forward until we felt the jerk. I turned round then and saw it.
And you actually saw it hit the ground, did you?
Oh, yes, indeed. Because then, of course, I was out of my seat. As soon as I saw what was happening, I got out of my seat so that I could get a better look at what was going on.
But you were completely helpless.
Oh, yes, indeed. There was nothing we could do. It was just a question of seeing whether there were any survivors and pinpointing the position of the crash.
Why did it go down?
I've no idea. The tail broke off, and as soon as the tail broke off, the glider lost lift.
You must have all had some theories at the time.
Oh, yes, indeed. I had a theory about another aircraft crossing the stream, which caused, through its slipstream, caused the glider to tip on one side and drop. But my gunner assures me this isn't so, that the Marauder had nothing to do with it.
The men on board must have been carrying quite a lot of ammunition. Do you think that had anything to do with it?
Well, obviously, once the thing had lost lift, whatever the contents were must have slipped to the back of the aircraft. Until the pilot dropped the nose, the aircraft, as it were nose upwards.
Could the tail have been blown off in an explosion?
Oh, yes, indeed. In fact, there is a theory that some of the tails on those gliders were fitted with explosive bolts in order to get them off quickly when they were on the ground, and that these explosive bolts had gone off early. It seems unlikely to me.
It must have been a horrific experience for you.
It was indeed. The carnage in the field when we arrived back here was such as I've never seen before, and I hope never to see again.
You were quite a young man at the time.
I was 21 then.
So all this must have had a terrific effect on you.
Well, I didn't particularly want to come back here, as I told Mr. Yates, but it's all a long time ago now, 35 years, and time heals, doesn't it?
Many people living in the Poulton area saw the crash from the ground. Among them, another member of the memorial committee, Keith Ford.
This particular Sunday morning, I was in my back garden with my mother and father and 2 sisters. We saw this vast armada of aircraft and gliders coming along, and all of a sudden there was an explosion, and the tail of this glider just came off, and it looked just as if someone was tipping charred paper out of it, and straight away it dropped, breaking the tow line and plummeting straight to earth, which it landed in this field here. And being children, we weren't allowed onto the site. I know my father, he came up to the site, and I remember him coming back at lunchtime saying it was just like a battlefield here. I came up here, I suppose, about a month or so afterwards, and there was quite a lot of fabric and that sort of thing here. I remember one particular piece of canvas was hanging in the trees there. That was stuck in my mind, you know. And, you know, we looked around the area, but we didn't pick anything up. But there was a lot of souvenirs people did pick up. But since then, we have been out here with metal detectors, and we have found quite a lot of relics of the glider itself, of which I've got at my home now. And it's hopeful, after this unveiling is done, that we're going to equally divide these relics between the Glider Pilots Regiment Museum at Meadowallop and the Royal Engineers at Aldershot.
What sort of relics are they?
Well, it's part of the fuselage I've got there. Perspex, quite a lot of live ammunition we found. Spent bullet cases, quite a lot. And one or two sort of personal belongings. One in particular is the head of a cigarette lighter, which you can still see the maker's name on it. And also, where the flint goes in after 35 years, the screw still works, funnily enough. The two heads of a safety razor. The chrome is magnificent form on it at the moment. They were found about 100 yards away from the actual craters, and they were about 10 foot apart from one another.
Little bits of personal kit which the men were taking with them.
Yes, this is little bits of personal kit they were taking with them, you see, yes.
What impact did this tragedy have on the people of this area?
Well, at the time it had a great impact at the time, but like many other things, as the years go by, people tend to forget and things are swept under the carpet. This particular Sunday, I remember at the village church in Gurney, I've never seen the church so full before or since. It was really crammed to capacity. And, you know, as time goes, things are swept under the carpet. Until we've renewed this now, interest had dropped, but now interest has really risen again. So we're very, very pleased about this, as a matter of fact, because it's part of local history. The local school children are taking a great interest in it, because they don't know what happened here, and it's nice to have them to have a record of it.
The memorial now stands on a quiet hillside opposite the Mendips. It probably would never have come about without the enthusiasm of committee chairman Peter Yates.
For some 30-odd years it has interested me, and as I came to leave Midsummer Norton and move to Hallertrow, closer in fact to the site, and walking with my dog in this rather beautiful countryside, I often imagined what had happened, or tried to imagine what had happened, and wondered where in fact the site of the crash might be. And it was very difficult to find anyone that actually knew about it. But not the whole details, not the full details, not in fact the date even. So I wrote to the War Office. They weren't able to immediately turn up any information. And it was only after I read A Bridge Too Far by Cornelius Ryan, before the film was made, that I saw in there a version of a glider crash which seemed to match up with this particular crash that I remembered as a child, except that in the book it had said that the glider had crashed in Wiltshire. So from that point I wrote to the War Office again, and they were then able to give me more details, and more specific details in fact. And from then I telephoned Sergeant Simpson, who was the witness that was detailed in the Bridge Too Far, and he then was able to fill me on even more details. And from that I was able to build some sort of picture. Certainly I knew by that time that they were on their way to Arnhem, and it was September the 17th, 1944. So that was very clear. And then I joined forces with my friend and colleague Keith Ford, who had served in the Royal Navy, or Royal Marines rather, and I had served in the Royal Navy, and I'd known him most of my life, and we had an equal interest. And he took an immediate interest in obtaining details and so on with regard to what had happened, and we managed to build up almost a complete picture. And then we had the idea of raising the memorial, so we approached the Royal Engineers, and with their help, the Royal Engineers Association of Bristol, we formed a committee with Flight Sergeant Ken Crowther as a founder member, and the whole thing started last year in earnest.
And now here we are standing on the edge of a hill looking out over towards the Mendips, and in front of us is this splendid stone column with the stone carved tablet to the memory of the 2 glider pilots and the 21 men of the Royal Engineers who were killed when the Horsa hit the ground here. Now, it's a list of names to us now, isn't it? Oakey, Clampett, Burrow, Cuthbertson. Do you know anything about any of them?
We know a little about most of them. They were certainly very mature soldiers, something of the age of 25, 26, regular troops for the most part, well trained, people that could have played a vital part in the campaign. In fact, we understand that they would have neutralized many of the charges on the bridges. One in particular was younger, much younger than the rest. I think it was Sapper Evans. He was just 18, and we did hear from one witness that we interviewed, who's since died, that in fact she discovered a book in his pocket. Several bodies were thrown clear and were intact, and this one particular chap had a book in his pocket which was called Death in the Clouds, which was rather ironic, and it was printed by Purnell and Sons, of course, of the Porton printers.
Just a mile or so from here?
Indeed, yes.
And at the bottom of the tablet there's a verse of poetry. They did not die in the battle din of world renowned or a medal win, but they gave their lives for you and me, that we and the whole world might be free. It's signed by Ruby Bowl, is it?
That's right.
Now, who's she?
Now, she was a trained nurse who happened to be leading a crowd of evacuees across the fields on a Sunday morning walk. And she remembered most vividly the accident, and obviously it had made an impression on her, and she wrote this poem. She's since died, and we asked whether in fact we might use this poem on the memorial, because we felt it to be most appropriate. And in fact, I think it does sum up the whole sacrifice that these chaps made. They were in fact the very first casualties of the battle for Arnhem.
An army band and local choirs will lead the singing at the service of dedication at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Major General Urquhart, who commanded the 1st Airborne Division, will unveil the memorial, and a wreath will be laid by Arnhem hero Colonel Dick Lonsdale. And wartime jeeps and other vehicles will also be on display, and the ceremony will end with a march past. And to find the site, will you head for the Polton area, where you'll find plenty of signposts.
Near Double Hill, that's near Polton and Farrington Gurney to the south of Bristol. 39 years ago, a glider crashed between the hills, killing many servicemen, 21 to be precise, plus the pilot and navigator. And it's expected that more than 250 people will attend this coming Sunday. And to give me some information, I have on the line from his home in Bitton, Peter Yates. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Trevor. Can't hear you awfully well.
Can you not? I will turn you up a trifle. I should be turning up now. How's that? That's lovely. I understand, by the way, before we launch into talking about this on Sunday, that you became a second granddad yesterday.
I did indeed, yes. In the evening, my youngest daughter gave birth to a son, Christopher John. Yeah. And I'd like to extend my congratulations to her and her husband, Michelle, and the IUA.
And what your copper, who that is?
I'll take you Mark II. Grandfather Mark II.
Well done, Peter. Congratulations. Was taking place. Can you give me some of the history? Why was the glider there in the first place 39 years ago?
Well, this airborne operation took off from airfields all over Gloucester and Somerset, and this particular glider and tug aircraft took off from Keyville in Wiltshire. And to form up the armada of aircraft, of course, they had to manoeuvre in the skies over Somerset, and in doing so, of course, is when the accident occurred.
This was the time when Montgomery, I think, wanted to take lots and lots of gliders over, filled with men, isn't it? Was that going to Arnhem?
Yes. His idea was that he wanted to end the war in 1944, and he wanted a massive airborne drop involving British paratroopers and glider-borne troops and the Americans, and he would capture the bridges across the Rhine, which would permit the Second Army to move right into Germany. But of course, as you know, the Arnhem Bridge wasn't captured, and it was a heroic.
21 soldiers were killed at Double Hill.
They were 21 Royal Engineers, very mature and experienced Royal Engineers, airborne engineers, and 2 glider pilots. Now, these were a special breed of soldier and pilot, which were specifically. and so on, to fly these gliders to transport people very quickly into the battle zone.
It was an horrific accident, though, wasn't it?
I'm sorry?
It was an horrific accident. I'm getting
Unfortunately, it was. There was carnage in the field, and most of the local people helped to what extent they could, but nevertheless, they were all killed.
Has there been a service held there every year since the accident, or is this quite a recent thing?
No, it is a recent thing. In the middle 70s, I became interested purely from a historical point of view, military history being my subject, and with a friend, Keith Ford from Science and Journey, we started investigating and researching and asking the local people. He, in fact, had seen the crash. Intrigued me. And as these stories go on, of course,